Chapter 271, The Return of an Old Jutsu. Why you did an outstanding job in restoring the Uzumaki clan and punishing those that harmed it in the first place. I have nothing but praise for your actions. Mido was currently attempting to restore her image, but after her previous outburst, the other people in the room only gave her looks of pity for her futile attempt. Mido's eyebrow twitched in irritation when her attempt failed miserably, so she decided to simply end this farce. Whatever, since we are done here, and I could confirm that the Uzumaki clan is doing well, I might as well stop the Edo Tensei and kill the weirdo who summoned us. Without further delay, Mido sent a chakra pulse through the chain that was still pinning Orochimaru to the wall, resulting in him struggling even harder than he previously did. Unfortunately for him, the Uzumaki clan's adamantine sealing chains weren't called like that without reason. They could restrain even Bijou, so how could Orochimaru possibly get away from them? Fear was clearly visible in Orochimaru's eyes when he felt Mido's chakra pulse getting closer and closer to him, but just before it could hit him, a second chain appeared and wrapped itself around Mido's and negated her chakra pulse. When Mido saw that her technique was cancelled, she looked at Yuna in confusion. Although I admit that cancelling my attack with a similar technique was rather impressive, why did you stop me? A smirk appeared on Yuna's face while Anko couldn't help but chuckle a little. She had a pretty good idea of what Yuna wanted to do. Well, at first, I only wanted to stop you from killing Orochimaru because I promised my girlfriend here that she would be the one to take his life, but after I saw your rather skillful attack just now, another reason appeared to stop you. Mido opened her eyes in surprise when she heard that Anko was Yuna's girlfriend, but moments later, a slightly sad smile appeared on her face. Although I am happy for you that you found a partner, it's a bit of a pity that someone with your ridiculous talent won't have any children. When Yuna heard Mido's complaint, she chuckled a little before waving her worries away. No need to worry about children. First, the problem of two women having a child is something I'm capable of solving. Second, I already have a harem of 3 with a few more just waiting for the right moment to join in, so the number of children won't be a problem. And finally, I have a little twin brother who is rather talented as well, and he has a harem of 2, so again, no need to worry about children. Silence covered the room as all 3 Edo Tensei summons looked at Yuna with gaping mouths. Yuna couldn't help but chuckle when she saw everyone's dumbfounded faces, and moments later, her gaze landed on Fuyuyuki. On a side note, one of his girlfriends is from the Yuki clan. Fuyu widened her eyes in surprise when she heard that, but after a moment of pondering, she simply shrugged her shoulders. Oh well, that's fine, I guess. If what you said about the current Uzumaki clan is true, then my clan's bloodline is at least somewhat secured. If possible, I would like to request that their children at least hear about the history of her mother's clan so that it won't be forgotten. There is no need to worry about that. Even without your request, I would have made sure that they learned about it. Fuyu simply nodded her head in gratitude before becoming silent again. Unlike the third Reikage, she was a taciturn person. After Yuna finished her short conversation with Fuyu, Mido resumed speaking. So, what is the second reason for stopping my attack? A dangerous grin appeared on Yuna's face as her gaze landed on Mido. Yuna's current facial expression alone gave her a relatively good understanding of her reason, but she listened to Yuna's explanation anyway. I have fought quite a few powerhouses by now, but all of them were of the same type. They used overwhelming power and flashy jutsu to win fights. You, however, are different, aren't you, Mido? Rather than those British methods, you used pinpoint precision attacks and complex seals to win, right? I'm pretty sure you know what I want by now. When Mido saw the battle-thirsty grin on Yuna's face, she could only shake her head with a wry smile on her face. Sigh to think the Uzumaki clan would one day have someone with your disposition in their ranks. Am I correct to assume that you want to fight me simply for the sake of fighting me? Hee, you are not wrong, but you aren't correct either. I want to fight all 3 of you at the same time. The moment Yuna finished speaking, her battle intent exploded as she flared her chakra and flooded the room with it. A 3-on-1 battle against 3 immortals. Doesn't that sound like fun? The reanimated people immediately flared their chakra as well to counter Yuna's, and it immediately became clear that the only one who could compare to her in sheer quantity and quality of chakra was Mida, while the third Reikage was a little bit behind those two, and Fuyuki was utterly outclassed. She might be the strongest person the Yuki clan ever had, but that unfortunately only brought her to about the level of a Lokage, which might be impressive in front of average shinobi but didn't mean much in front of chakra monsters like the Yuna, Mido, and the third Reikage. Although Mido was impressed by the amount of chakra someone as young as Yuna possessed, she didn't think that what Yuna had shown so far was enough to defeat all 3 of them. I admit that the amount of chakra you have is impressive, but that alone won't be enough to deal with us. Do you really want to do this? Ha ha ha, isn't that obvious? Let's have some fun. Yuna clapped her hands together and gathered a frankly obscene amount of chakra, and moments later, she unleashed this fight's first jutsu. Ice style, domain creation, heavenly realm of eternal ice. The moment she said the last word of her jutsu's name, everything turned white. Chapter 272, familiar but somewhat different. Mido's eyes widened in surprise when she saw the frozen ground around Yuna expanding towards her at a rapid pace. Without a moment of hesitation, another 8 chains burst out of her back while she pulled back the chain that was still pinning Orochimaru to a wall at the same time. Blue chakras started shining on the tips of the 9 chains as they began drawing seals into the air at rapid speed, and not even half a second later, a complex dome of seals was formed around Mido. The seals forming the dome lit up for a moment and started melting, forming a sturdy-looking shield around Mido. Although Mido felt some pressure when Yuna's ice crashed into the shield, a short moment later, the pressure became weaker as the ice parted and grew around her shield instead, leaving a small patch of ground around Mido unfrozen. The third Reikage, on the other hand, wasn't fazed in the slightest when he saw Yuna's ice approaching him. He was a simple man, and compared to most other shinobi, there were only a few tricks in his bag. No, in fact, there was only a single trick in his bag. The trick was called brute force. Without a moment of hesitation, he cloaked his body with the code of lightning chakra and waited for Yuna's ice to arrive. When it did, he could feel it press against his lightning-covered feet for a moment before it simply went past him. Unlike Mido and the third Reikage, Fuyuki did not act instantly. The moment Yuna's ice made an appearance, she went into a slight daze due to the feeling Yuna's ice gave her. Although her ice was a Kekkei Genkai, she still saw it like just another jutsu, but Yuna's ice felt utterly different, much more natural. She simply couldn't grasp why the ice used by some woman from the Uzumaki clan, who never had any relations to ice jutsu, felt more real than her own. Only when she felt the powerful lightning chakra the third Reikage was oozing did she manage to get out of her daze, which unfortunately meant that Yuna's ice was about to reach her. In a split-second decision, she created a hastily made wall of ice around her, which she quickly realized was the wrong choice. Yuna's ice didn't even pretend to be bothered by the ice wall and simply kept expanding, so Fuyuki could only grit her teeth and jump upwards and hope that Yuna wouldn't shoot her down on the way to the ceiling. Meanwhile, Orochimaru didn't even consider for a second whether he should stay or leave. The moment Mido's chain was pulled out of his shoulder, he got up and started running away immediately. There were multiple reasons why Orochimaru fed up gauging Mido's capabilities to such a legendary degree. Maybe the most obvious and, at the same time, most overlooked reason was that Mido didn't appear that much in history books. Well, she did appear, but not as an individual. She always appeared in the role of Hashirama's wife instead of as the person Mido Senju. Another problem was that historians mostly disregarded Mido Senju due to the uniqueness of seals. What would historians rather write about? A person who could do some seal stuff that no one understood, or a person who could summon a 100-meter-tall statue with 1,000 arms that smashed everything to pieces? The answer was rather obvious. Another problem was that Orochimaru pretty much disregarded her outstanding talent in seals for rather obvious reasons. She was an Uzumaki. All Uzumaki had outstanding talent in seals. That was like reading about an especially lazy Nara. It simply wasn't anything special. How could someone possibly write about what level of sealing a person reached when they themselves didn't fully understand it? As for forgetting that she was very likely involved in the creation of the seal, that was pretty much all Orochimaru's fault. Anyway, the moment when Mido's chakra pulse was about to hit him a few seconds ago, he realized how much she outclassed him. He didn't know what that chakra pulse would have done to him, but what he knew was that he wouldn't have survived it. He could only pray to the gods, in which he didn't believe, that he would survive the attack somehow. Funnily enough, someone who was a goddess in a previous life actually saved him. Yuna stopped the attack for some reason that was incomprehensible to him. Since Mido could act freely, Orochimaru was certain that Yuna would simply wait for her to clean up and then claim the credit for killing him, but what Orochimaru didn't understand was that Yuna was not an individual that paid much attention to acting logically. If Yuna still considered Orochimaru a threat at this point in time, she would have undoubtedly let Mido finish him off, but that was no longer the case. By now, she simply considered him as a fun little toy she could hand over to her girlfriend so she could have some fun with it. As if to confirm Yuna's attitude, the moment Orochimaru started flaying, Anko followed him with a vicious grin on her face. "Get back here, you little pedophile, Auntie Anko wants to play with you, Tilda." Orochimaru would have cursed Anko for her words, but when he turned around to do so, he caught a glimpse of Yuna's ever-expanding eyes and felt the massive amounts of chakra oozing out of her and decided that there were worse things than someone piling up mocking words on him. Especially since his arms started feeling colder and colder the closer he got to Yuna's eyes. Damn it, what is even going on right now? How in the world did she manage to increase her chakra pull to such a ridiculous degree in a matter of not even 2 years? She isn't even using the Kyuubi's chakra yet, and it's already is this absurd. Now that I think about it, did the masked man know about her true strength? If he did, I splendidly walked into his trap. Damn it, so this is how Akatsuki planned to get rid of me. I should have known that this was a trap. Meanwhile, in the land of Earth, a masked man with a black cloak that had red clouds printed on it was traveling towards Awagakure in a good mood. Those three combined with Mu, the second Tsukikage, should be more than enough to get rid of that monster. We already have people that surpass her in eye style, close combat, and seals. We will be able to thoroughly suppress her with this and then use Mu's particle star to finish her off. Her corpse, which Orochimaru wanted so much, might get lost due to that, but I couldn't care less. Moments later, the masked person, Obito, could no longer contain his joy and started laughing out loud. "Ha ha ha. I will definitely kill you, Yuna Uzumaki." Chapter 273, Prelude to Battle. A slight smirk appeared on Yuna's face when she saw Fuyu hastily jump off the ground so that she could evade her ice by sticking to the ceiling. It would be relatively easy to intercept her jump, but Yuna saw no point in doing so. After all, since Fuyu uses ice style, it was pretty much impossible for her to be a threat to Yuna. Meanwhile, Mido observed the aftermath of Yuna's jutsu and couldn't help but frown. Despite using massive amounts of chakra for her jutsu, it barely had any offensive strength and only covered the room in a layer of ice. No, there was something else that changed. Mido glanced at Yuna, and her frown deepened further. She was suddenly wearing a sleek-looking armor that appeared to be entirely made out of ice, while a regal diadem appeared on her head. Mido wasn't sure why, but the pressure radiating off of Yuna significantly increased after she changed her wardrobe. Worst of all, the moment Yuna's ice went past her, Mido felt like she was suddenly transported into the stomach of a beast. The third Reikage felt somewhat similar to Mido, but instead of calmly analyzing the situation, he took another approach. "Ha ha ha, so what if you froze the Roan? I will simply smash through everything you throw at me." Without a moment of hesitation, the lightning chakra that was coating him became thicker, and he disappeared from where he stood and reappeared in front of Yuna with his fist already flying towards her. Yuna couldn't help but smile when she saw the speed and strength of the third Raikid's attack. Although she certainly could match his speed, she was under no illusion that she could compare to his strength, so blocking his attack head-on was obviously a bad idea. So naturally, this was exactly what Yuna decided to do as her grin twisted further and red chakra started bubbling out of her, forming a chakra cloak with 6 tails under her ice armor. 2 fists met midair, resulting in an earth-shaking explosion, and while the third Raikid slid backward due to the force of the collision, 2 ice spikes shot out of Yuna's back and anchored her into the ground, preventing her from doing the same. Ha ha ha, you will need more than that to impress me, Muscler. Uzumaki sealing style, bijou suppression. While Yuna had her little exchange with the third Raikid, Mido appeared behind her with all of her 9 chains glowing with blue chakra, and moments later, they were wrapped around Yuna, causing her red chakra cloak to vanish instantly. Mido shook her head when she saw that. As expected, so you really have the Kyuubi sealed inside you. Let me, your elder, give you a little advice: never use a bijou's chakra against a fellow Uzumaki. Yuna couldn't help but chuckle a little when she heard Mido's words while she tried to free herself from Mido's chains. Hee, so that is how it feels to be trapped with the Uzumaki's chains. Quite intriguing, I have to admit. A frown appeared on Mido's face when she noticed Yuna's carefree attitude. Despite being trapped, you seem to be relatively carefree. I'm rather curious about how you plan to get out of this. Hee, that is relatively simple. The advice you gave me just now might be good for other people, but there is one aspect of it that doesn't work well for me. While Mido was taken aback by Yuna's words, Yuna's grin twisted further as a glint of insanity appeared in her eyes. Hee, your advice was common sense. Yet again, liquid chakra started flowing out of Yuna, but this time, instead of being pure red, its primary color was blue, and it had small patches of red and white in it. Additionally, instead of 6 tails, 7 grew out of Yuna's back. And I'm not a big fan of that nonsense. Before Mido could understand what was going on, Yuna's chakra cloak was fully formed and pushed away the chains that were binding her. Mido could only gape in astonishment when she saw her chains harmlessly fall to the ground. The seals she just used were literally created to stop a Jinchuriki from using the bijou's chakra, and despite that, that was precisely what pushed away her seal. That was impossible. Before she could regather her wits, Yuna's fist smashed into her, sending her flying into a wall. See? That advice wasn't worth much, so let me give you a little advice instead. While facing me, everything you consider to be common sense for a shinobi is entirely worthless. Techniques that have always worked so far will not work against me. Strategies that no one managed to see through up until now, I will see through them. Don't hold anything back. Throw every ploy, every fate, every little trick you have at me, and prepare yourself to get crushed anyway. Ice style, eternal ice prison. In an attempt to prove Yuna's words wrong, Fuyu sneaked up on her and tried to trap her into ice. Yuna couldn't help but chuckle when she saw her futile attempt, and moments later, Fuyu was frozen by an ice prison, resulting in Yuna's chuckling evolving into full-blown laughter. Ha ha ha, I might as well mention that ice doesn't work on me. Chapter 274, yet another new dare. Damn it, Orochimaru, stop running away and fight me like a man. Snake. Anyway, stop running away. Could you leave me alone? I don't have time to humor you, I need to get away from that crazy woman. Although you are correct about her being crazy, how do you call my girlfriend crazy? Orochimaru's lower body was currently transformed into that of a snake's, and he was slithering away from Yuna's current position at high speed. Closely following behind him was Anka, who used every moment she had to pile up more curses on Orochimaru while occasionally throwing a few projectiles at him, which he dodged relatively easily. A few moments later, Orochimaru sighed in relief as he finally reached the place he was looking for. It was a wall that looked exactly like every other wall in his hideout but was somewhat special. Or, to be more precise, it was one of the only walls that were not special. A skilled Earth-style user can easily phase through a normal Earth, so Orochimaru naturally wouldn't allow there to be such a huge weakness in his hideout. So, every wall in his hideout was reinforced to make it pretty much impossible for someone to get through them except for a few chosen walls that could serve as emergency exits. The wall right in front of him was one of those walls, and considering Enko's abysmal talent with Earth style, Orochimaru had no doubt that she wouldn't be able to follow him. Without a moment of hesitation, Orochimaru gathered Earth Chakra and dove through the wall without distorting the Earth in the slightest. Word, you're supposed to be a snake. When the F did you turn into a mole? Although Orochimaru's face was twitching in irritation when he heard yet another curse from Anko, he decided to simply ignore it for now. Anko sighed in annoyance when she saw Orochimaru dive into a wall and vanish. Since she came here to kill Orochimaru, she naturally predicted that he would try to run away like that, and her spirit sense was still firmly locked onto Orochimaru despite him burrowing into a wall. What annoyed her was that she couldn't follow Orochimaru without using her cultivation, something she wanted to do as little as possible to test out how far she had gotten since she met Yuna. With another sigh of annoyance and a shrug of her shoulders, the red hue around her eyes returned, and her eyes turned crimson again. At the same time, the temperature around her body increased significantly, and her body was strengthened. Just like Orochimaru before her, she jumped towards the wall, but unlike Orochimaru, she didn't simply disappear into it like it was liquid but pierced through it, leaving a smoldering hole of scorched earth behind. A few moments later, Orochimaru reached the surface and sighed in relief. He wasn't sure what kind of tracking capabilities Yuna had, but he didn't believe that she could follow his tracks after he dove through the earth like he just did. That was also why a rather ugly expression appeared on his face when the earth underneath him suddenly started rumbling. His first instinct was to continue running away, but when he felt that the air was getting hotter instead of colder, he discarded that thought for now. If there was one thing he learned about Yuna in his last few encounters with her, it was that her appearance would usually decrease the temperature, not increase it. Moments later, a geyser exploded out of the ground a few meters away from Orochimaru, but instead of hot water, fire and molten rock shot out of it. Anko landed a few meters away from Orochimaru with a slight smirk on her face, while she was seemingly not bothered by the molten rocks that were still dripping off of her. Meanwhile, Orochimaru could only look dumbfounded at Anko's current form. He had, of course, seen Anko use natural energy during the Chunin exam, but when she did it, it only increased her strength by a few percent. Now, however, Anko was oozing pressure so intense that even he felt endangered by it. Orochimaru's face twisted in anger as the combination of Anko's mocking grin, lesser posture, and all the mockery she had piled upon him up until now finally caused Orochimaru to snap. How could you possibly reach such a high level of power? When I kicked you out, you were a nobody. I thoroughly tested your potential, and you were simply not worth my time. Let's not even talk about Sage Mode. The amount of chakra you currently possess should have been impossible for you to reach. How? What happened? How is this possible? Anko couldn't help but shudder in pleasure when she heard Orochimaru's crazed words. Like she previously mentioned, she barely cared about her revenge against Orochimaru anymore, but that didn't mean that she couldn't get a lot of joy from seeing him struggling like this. While Orochimaru was ranting on and on, a benevolent expression appeared on Anko's face that caught him off guard. The Tao is infinite, but only by finding your own can you reach the apex. An uncomfortable silence descended onto the battlefield, while Anko couldn't help but feel more and more awkward. I just wanted to mess with him a little, but it got really awkward somehow. How in the world does Yuna manage to spout nonsense like that so confidently? A few more seconds passed before Orochimaru started speaking again. Why did you suddenly start spouting nonsense, UIGH? Boom. Ha ha ha, take this, Tao of Sucker Punch. When the still confused Orochimaru started speaking, Enko decided to take advantage of his confusion and punched him in the face. When Enko saw him sliding over the ground face first, she couldn't help but nod in approval at her own actions. That worked out pretty well. In case somebody asks, I will just pretend that I was talking gibberish to distract Orochimaru so I could get a good punch in. I totally wasn't trying to copy Yuna's I'm a wise expert persona. Yep, totally wasn't. Rather than spending more thoughts on useless stuff, Enko decided to follow Orochimaru, who was still in the process of getting blasted away by her attack. It would be rather awkward to explain that Orochimaru got away because she punched him too hard, after all. Chapter 275, Fighting Orochimaru. Enko couldn't help but feel a little giddy after landing her first hit against Orochimaru. She heard about how much fun Kurama had while he was pummeling Hashirama, and now she could more or less understand that notion. While she was running after Orochimaru, she came to an abrupt halt and rolled her eyes in annoyance. Damn, this guy is worse than a cockroach. Fire gathered around her fist, and moments later, she slammed it into the ground, resulting in another fire geyser being created and a charred corpse hitting the ground shortly after. Although I'm a little reluctant to admit it, I guess I should be thankful for Yuna helping me improve my spirit sense, otherwise, I wouldn't have noticed another Orochimaru hiding here. I wonder what kind of technique this was. The corpse in front of me is clearly real, but the other Orochimaru appears to be real as well. Some kind of weird splitting technique. Enko pondered the situation a split second longer before shrugging her shoulders with disinterest and chasing after the other Orochimaru. Meanwhile, the Orochimaru that was sent flying by Enko had a twisted smile on his face. He already expected things to get dangerous when he felt Enko's full strength after she burst out of the earth, so he immediately prepared himself to deploy jutsus that would help him get away alive. Although he didn't manage to dodge Enko's first attack, he still used the chance to use one of his trump cards. The moment he hit the ground the first time after Enko's attack, he used the second Tsukikage splitting technique to leave a copy of himself inside the ground to have a backup plan in case he couldn't get away from Enko. A few moments later, he came to a stop as a serious expression appeared on his face. If Enko noticed him smirking, she might find out about his backup plan, after all. However, before she could reach him, his eyes widened in disbelief and he spat out some blood. Impossible, how did she find my split body? Although it was a bit too far away to see clearly, he could still vaguely see a charred body lying next to Enko. How? How does she have a counter prepared for everything I try? It's almost as if she planned this encounter. The moment that thought appeared in Orochimaru's head, his anger diminished instantly and was instead replaced by a combination of calculating calmness and dread. I see, only after she prepared countermeasures for everything she thought I was capable of did she appear before me. Now that I think about it properly, she said that Yuna was only here for transport, so she must have gotten here with the Flying Thunder God seal, but where did she? In no way. It's on Sasuke. That female transformation was just a distraction. It was not a distraction. While Yuna put the Flying Thunder God seal on Sasuke, she simply thought, while I'm at it, I might as well mess with Sasuke a little. Shortly after Orochimaru's realization, Enko landed in front of him, and when she saw his slightly distressed look, she couldn't help but enjoy herself. Hee, it seems like you managed to piece a few pieces of this puzzle together by yourself. So, are you ready to breathe your last breath now that you realize that there is no escape? Yet again, Orochimaru's anger spiked when he saw Enko's cocky expression. Don't think it will be this easy. I am still one of the Sannin. I have been fighting in wars before you were even born, so don't get cocky, brat. Kuchio's no jutsu. When Orochimaru finished his rant, he bit his finger and, after a few hand seals, slammed his palm on the ground, resulting in complex pattern growing out of his palm, followed by a massive smoke cloud. Orochimaru, you'd better have prepared the adequate number of sacrifices. You can have as many sacrifices as you want, Manda, but I will need to get out of this situation first. Although Manda was slightly surprised by Orochimaru's slightly flustered voice when he glanced around to see the reason for his current situation and only saw Anko standing in front of him, he scoffed in disdain. Isn't that the little girl you gave out a contract to? Why are you getting cornered by a little girl, Orochimaru? When Anko saw Manda appearing and heard how dismissive he was of her, she couldn't help but chuckle again. Honestly, a few years ago, she was absolutely terrified of Manda, but now she could only see him as a bloated worm. Since Yuna told Hinata and Anko about her previous life, she would occasionally tell some stories about it. One of those stories was about how intelligent animals increase their level of power. There were only very, very few cases in which they didn't decide to compress their power into a smaller, more compact form, and now that Anko was using natural energy and was looking at Manda, she knew why that was the case. From the perspective of an untrained eye, Manda's massive form was incredibly intimidating, but Anko could quickly tell how fragile it was. Even a normal kunai could potentially penetrate Manda's scales, which would have been impossible if he went for a more condensed form. Since Orochimaru and Manda were still busy arguing with each other, Anko decided to stop messing around. She could easily tell that Orochimaru was already heavily weakened from using the Edo Tensei, his escape, his splitting technique, and finally from summoning Manda, so it was time to finish this. Akane, you got a moment? Moments later, a small crimson snake peeked out of Anko's sleeve, and when it did, Orochimaru and Manda's heads immediately snapped towards its direction. While Orochimaru could only feel the incredibly dense natural energy Akane's body seemed to be entirely made of, Manda, as a fellow snake, could feel a dangerous feeling radiating off of her. Before either of them could move, however, Akane opened her mouth and gathered massive amounts of natural energy in front of her, resulting in a small white ball of concentrated flames forming. At the same time, Anko took a deep breath and gathered a similar amount of energy in her body. Anko was just about to shoot the technique while saying its name when a glint passed through her eyes. Since this is the finisher, I might as well make it flashy. How bad could it be, right? Man-Beast Flame Cultivation Combination Arts, Heaven-Devouring Wide Inferno. Anko and Akane shot the technique they prepared simultaneously, resulting in a massive wave of searing hot, white flames shooting towards Orochimaru and Manda. Manda didn't even bother to pretend to be loyal to Orochimaru and immediately burst into a cloud of smoke, leaving Orochimaru behind. Orochimaru, meanwhile, gritted his teeth, bit his finger again, and summoned something else. Kuchiyo's no Jetsu, Rashomon. 3 massive gates appeared between Anko's combination attack and Orochimaru, and moments later, the wall of flames smashed into the first gate, melting it down instantly. Before Orochimaru could comprehend what just happened, the white flames washed over the second gate, melting it down just as quickly. When Orochimaru finally realized that his gates barely granted him any protection, it was already too late. The last gate endured the onslaught of white flames barely any longer than the first 2, and moments later, they engulfed Orochimaru, burning him to a crisp instantly. When the technique was over, Anko fell to her knees while breathing heavily, and Akane grubbily vanished inside her sleeve again. Phew, that took more strength than I expected. While Anko was regaining her breath, a slight blush appeared on her face, and she quickly spread her spirit sense to see if anyone was nearby, and after she made sure that she was alone, she sighed in relief. Good, it seems like no one heard me use that cringeworthy attack 9. I'm never doing that again. Guess it is time for the last push. Anko shook her head to get rid of the fatigue and started walking towards the place where Orochimaru just got burned. Although it wasn't easy to notice, Anko could still feel a little bit of Orochimaru's presence with her spirit sense. Damn it, he's even more tenacious than a cockroach. Meanwhile, a few hundred meters away from Anko's current position, a small white snake dug itself out of the ground. It warily looked around, and after it confirmed that no one was watching it, it started sneakily slithering away. Unfortunately for it, just when it was about to disappear inside the dense forest, a small crimson snake sneaked up on it and bit into its neck, killing it instantly. After the crimson snake finished eating the white one, it felt the density of its body increase, but despite that, it had a dissatisfied expression on its face, and moments later, Anko approached it with a slight chuckle. "See, I warned you that he would taste foul, Akane." Akane hissed at Anko in annoyance before yet again vanishing inside her sleeve, causing Anko to chuckle yet again. "Oh well, now that this is done, let's see how Yuna is currently doing." Chapter 276, The Source of Corruption. Mido Sanju casually stepped out of the wall she was just punched into with a frown on her face. Since she was an Edo Tensei, she was neither wounded nor could she feel any pain, but she couldn't help but frown when she saw the tricolored chakra that was currently coating Yuna. "What is this chakra?" "The source of the red chakra is rather apparent. I was once the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, after all. The blue chakra is a little bit weirder but not wholly unexplainable. Since the natural color of chakra is blue, the only thing strange about the blue chakra that is coating her is its density. Considering the meathead that was summoned together with me can do it as well, it isn't unheard of to use chakra as a cloak to improve your strength in combat, but the density of Yuna's cloak is similar to Abiji's, which should be impossible. Did she somehow manage to filter the corrupted chakra out of the Kyuubi? That should be impossible, right? Anyway, that isn't even the most crucial point. What is that white chakra? Chakra is not supposed to be white." Mido's frown deepened as she glanced at Fuyuki, who was still encased in her own ice jutsu, while Yuna's words rang in her head. "Ice doesn't work on me, huh? How is that even possible? Fuyu is the one that shot the jutsu, but it backfired instantly and hit herself. Control of ice that surpasses reason and unknown white chakra, huh? No matter how I look at it, these two things are connected." Mido pondered a few moments longer before she made a decision. From what she could tell, Yuna probably wasn't someone who bothered too much about keeping secrets, considering how easily she admitted to being the one responsible for getting rid of those Konoha elders. "That white chakra, where does it come from?" A slight smirk appeared on Yuna's face when she heard Mido's blunt question. Rather than long annoying discussions where both sides tried to get a hold of each other's secrets, she was a much bigger fan of the more direct method. The Kyuubi's chakra is a powerful source of corruption. Just a mode of it can cause severe damage to weak people, while the incredible amounts of hatred it contains can easily overwhelm the senses and cause someone to go insane or even consume them completely. Although Mido was listening to Yuna's words, she had no idea where she wanted to go with this story. None of the things Yuna just said were anything new, after all. However, in front of me, all of that is meaningless because I am the far more significant source of corruption. A face-splitting grin appeared on Yuna's face as she bent her knees a little to catapult herself towards Mido at incredible speed. Mid-flight, she reeled her fist back and punched towards Mido with an ice-coated fist. Although Mido was surprised by the sudden attack, the 9 chains that were growing out of her back started moving with lightning speed, and just when Yuna's attack was about to reach her, a red shield rose in front of Mido that blocked Yuna's punch. Ripples were generated all over the shield due to the power of Yuna's attack, while Mido couldn't help but groan a little due to the pressure of Yuna's attack, despite that she managed to stand her ground. "Ha ha ha, going insane due to hatred. Too bad, I already am insane." Suddenly, the third Reikage appeared behind Yuna and stabbed towards her with 4 fingers that had massive amounts of chakra concentrated at their tips. "Have you already forgotten about me? Hellstad, 4-finger Nukaidi." Yuna, naturally, noticed the third Reikage's movement and was ready for it. The hand that didn't punch Mido's barrier balled up into a fist while her middle and index finger remained straight. She used those 2 fingers like a sword and cut towards the third Reikage's approaching attack, resulting in a powerful clash. A mode of it causes severe damage to weak people. I am not weak. Despite the powerful attack, Yuna didn't move from her position at all due to her ice anchoring her to the ground. A short moment after the clash was over, Mido and the third Raikage's eyes widened in shock due to Yuna's eyes slowly creeping towards them. It not only started to freeze Mido's shield but even started to freeze the third Raikage's chakra cloak. The chakra can consume someone completely. My ice devours everything, not the other way around. Fuyu, who managed to free herself by now, went through numerous hand signs while amassing a vast amount of chakra to shoot her next attack at Yuna. Although she didn't understand how Yuna managed to counter her previous jutsu, she didn't believe that she could do the same with something much more powerful. Ice Style, Twin Ice Dragon Jutsu. Two massive dragons formed and shot towards Yuna. However, Yuna only glanced at them once before she stopped paying attention to them, and just like they were Fuyu's target all along, the two dragons shot towards Mido and the third Raikage. What is going on? You will need more than that to impress me. Although the two people heard Fuyu's frustration-filled yell, they still clicked their tongues in annoyance. They already had enough trouble with Yuna alone, and now they even had to deal with a teammate whose attacks could apparently be controlled by Yuna with absolute ease. Both of them jumped back simultaneously to dodge the approaching dragons while glaring at Fuyu, effectively telling her not to interfere anymore, which caused her eyebrow to twitch in irritation. Mido and the third Raikage glanced at each other for a moment before both of them lowered their stance and prepared themselves to go all out. While previously Mido only used her chains to draw seals, now her finger also lit up with chakra, so she could use them for sealing as well. 9 chains and 10 fingers, resulting in a total of 19 seals that can be drawn simultaneously. The third Raikage, on the other hand, didn't have any fancy tricks like that, and the only thing that changed was the density of his chakra cloak and the number of fingers he used, which was reduced to 1. Ha ha ha, it seems like you are finally willing to go all out. Very well. Yuna's presence started getting even more domineering as her battle intent started flooding Orochimaru's base. 7 chains burst out of her back and combined themselves with the 7 chakra tails that were already flailing around her. Her face twisted into a crazy smile while the ice that covered the whole cave kept getting denser and colder. Let's play. Meanwhile, Anko was walking through Orochimaru's base with a happy skip in her steps. After killing Orochimaru, her mood was beyond excellent, and she had to actively hold herself back from whistling in happiness due to it. Moments later, Yuna's battle intent washed over her, which made the smile on her face even more pronounced. Hee, it seems like Yuna is having fun. I guess I should warn Hinata that today's night activities might get a little wild. A few moments later, Anko arrived on the battle scene and couldn't help but chuckle a little at what she saw. Yuna, Mido, and the third Raikage were currently having a high-speed 2-on-1 battle, which was pretty much what Anko expected to happen when she saw who Orochimaru summoned, while the fourth person in the room, Fuyuki, seemed to be somewhat depressed. She was currently sitting in a corner with a massive pout on her face while drawing circles on the ground with her finger. Although Anko certainly found that scene somewhat amusing, she couldn't help but feel a little bit of pity for her as well. After all, it was Orochimaru's fault for summoning an ice user to fight against Yuna, and Fuyu herself had nothing to do with it. After pondering the current situation for a moment, Anko simply shrugged her shoulders, walked towards her, and sat down next to her. Yo, if you want some advice, I suggest you focus your attention on Yuna's ice instead of sulking. I'm not really sure how or why, but Haka, who was part of your clan, got stronger after observing how Yuna uses her ice. Fuyu was somewhat startled when someone suddenly sat down next to her, and she couldn't help but look weirdly at Anko when she heard her advice. Getting stronger just by looking at her using ice? What kind of nonsense is that? She considered arguing with the person who nonchalantly sat down next to her, but after a short moment, she decided to just ignore her. From what she could tell, the jutsu that was used to summon her made her pretty much immortal, so she really didn't care if someone was sitting down next to her or not. While she let her gaze lazily wander all over the cave they were currently in, she couldn't help but notice that Yuna's ice seemed to spread further and further without any input from Yuna's side. She picked up one of the nearby frozen pebbles and took a closer look at Yuna's ice, and as soon as she did, she fell into a daze. What is this ice? It feels so different. Anchor, meanwhile, didn't say anything when Fuyu fell into a daze, chuckled a little, and returned her attention to Yuna, who was currently laughing like a mad woman. Yep, tonight will definitely be fun, Tilda. Chapter 277, showing off the new Dao's true potential. The tip of a finger that is filled to the brim with lightning chakra and a huge sword entirely made of ice clashed, resulting in a devastating explosion of ice and lightning that tore everything in the vicinity of the clash into pieces. Simultaneously, two hands with a complex array of seals drawn all over them shot towards the person holding the sword. A smirk appeared on Yuna's face as she increased the amount of chakra she was supplying to her sword while letting go of it with one of her hands to intercept the incoming attack. Although she wasn't strong enough to contest with the third Reikage strength with only one hand, there was no problem as long as she used enough chakra to compensate for the difference. Yuna gave the seals drawn all over Mido's hands a glance, and moments later, the ice that was coating her hand started moving and formed a complex array of seals as well. The two attacks clashed, but instead of causing an explosion, chakra ripples originated from the point of contact, and moments later, both seals shattered simultaneously. However, Mido was far from down as her 9 adamantine sealing chains stabbed into the ground around the clashing trio, resulting in thousands of seals bursting out of Mido and her 9 chains and crawling towards Yuna. Sealing Art, 10-Pillar Chakra Suppression Seal. The moment the first seal touched her, Yuna could feel that her chakra output was decreasing at a rapid pace and that the third Reikage was slowly starting to push her back. While most people would be overwhelmed by suddenly being trapped by such a complex sealing formation while clashing with someone as powerful as the third Reikage, Yuna was not most people. Her face twisted in glee when she realized her current situation as her thirst for battle became even more potent. Her eyes moved at lightning speed to analyze Mido's seal as fast as possible, and not even a split second later, her 7 chains that were combined with Kurama's tail started drawing seemingly random lines made out of ice in midair. Ice Seal Combination Style, All-Devouring Divine Ice Seal. Although Mido had no clue what the ice lines Yuna just produced meant, with her experience as a sealing grandmaster, she could at least tell that Yuna was drawing some kind of seal in a system she had never seen before. Although she currently had no time for idle thoughts, she still couldn't help but ponder where Yuna learned such a foreign-looking sealing style. However, a short moment later, she remembered what Yuna told her about her childhood, and she realized where this unusual sealing style was coming from. She created it from scratch. Just how abnormal can a single person get? Despite her idle thoughts, Mido's mind attempted to analyze the seal Yuna had just drawn, and after concluding that she had no idea where she was even supposed to start, she made a split-second decision. Retreat. Without a moment of hesitation, she cancelled the seal that was about to paralyze Yuna completely and jumped backward while yelling at the third Reikage to do the same. These 3 people had been clashing with each other for quite a while now, so Mido had somewhat accepted just how abnormal Yuna was by now. Although she had no clue what the seal Yuna just created would do, she would rather not be in its vicinity when it activated. Before the third Reikage could react to Mido's words, a white dome exploded out of the seal Yuna just made and started engulfing everything around it. The first one who was entirely covered by it was Yuna, who didn't seem to be bothered by it in the slightest. Moments later, it reached the third Reikage's hand, and despite being an Edo Tensei, his instinct screamed at him to get away from the white dome as far as he could. He flared his chakra, increasing the density of his chakra cloak far beyond what he usually considered his maximum output, and appeared a few dozen meters away from the slowly expanding ice dome. He glanced at his hand that briefly touched the dome and couldn't help but be entirely bewildered by what he saw. It was gone. Every part of his hand that was covered by the ice dome was gone, and despite being an Edo Tensei, it wasn't regenerating at all. Additionally, ice started slowly creeping up his arm, and no matter how much chakra he pumped into it, it barely slowed down. Moments later, the ice dome vanished, revealing Yuna with a casual smile on her face. As expected of someone who reached the peak of this world's sealing arts while they were alive, you managed to see through my attack to some degree. A frown appeared on Mido's face when she heard Yuna's words. Although Mido didn't think that Yuna was purposely mocking her, she felt that Yuna was looking down on her for some reason. Despite Yuna just being a very young woman, Mido felt like she was being treated as a small child who just managed to show something impressive to her senior. Despite that, she pushed down that feeling and decided to give Yuna a relatively short response instead. "You are a monster." Yuna couldn't help but chuckle when she heard Mido's response before nodding her head in agreement. "Correct, I am a monster. Nothing about me isn't abnormal, and I wouldn't want it any other way. After all, there is nothing more boring than normal." While Mido's eyebrows were twitching like crazy due to Yuna's ridiculous statement, the third Reikage was still trying to push back Yuna's ice. Yuna took a deep breath, resulting in her presence slowly getting weaker, while her chakra cloak and ice armor vanished. "Well, I'm quite spent." As expected, fighting two people with endless amounts of chakra is rather tiring, so let's end this here. Mido couldn't help but be bewildered by the sudden shift in mood, so the moment Yuna stopped speaking, she immediately started asking questions. "What? Why do you suddenly want to end it? Despite clashing with the two of us for such a long time, you seem to be completely fine, so why do you suddenly want to stop?" Yuna couldn't help but chuckle when she heard Mido's questions. From her perspective, it probably looked like this fight was far from over, but she couldn't be more wrong. That is rather easy to answer. It's because thousands of seals that were hidden underneath a layer of ice all over the room started glowing, while a massive grin appeared on Yuna's face. Although she used the same trick to capture Hashirama, there is no shame in using a good scheme twice. "I have already won." Before either Mido or the third Reikage could move a single muscle, the seals in the room activated while an insane smile appeared on Yuna's face. "Ha ha ha, witness my new Dao. Supreme pranking style, ultimate sealing technique, the Dao of cake seals the heaven and earth." SPOLATX3. Cakes hit the faces of Mido, the third Reikage, and even Fuya, who was still sitting in a corner while closely observing a frozen pebble she held in her hand, and not even a second later, all three of them vanished and were replaced by three small tokens that had different numbers on them. When Yuna saw that everything worked out perfectly, she gave herself a satisfied nod and started picking up the three tokens that were left behind. "Well, that was fun tilde." Chapter 278, Sasuke Uchiha, Savior. When Yuna saw that her technique successfully sealed away all three of her opponents, an exhausted sigh escaped her lips as she started to clench and unclench her fist slowly. Few as expected, clashing head-on with the third Reikage was a terrible idea. That guy's body is as tough as steel. I might have actually confused him for a body cultivator if it wasn't for the total lack of natural energy in his body. Anko couldn't help but chuckle when she heard Yuna's words, and moments later, her hands landed on Yuna's shoulders and started casually massaging them. "If you knew that it was a bad idea, then why did you do it anyway?" Yuna's shoulders relaxed when she felt Anko's touch before she started chuckling as well. I think you know the answer to that question rather well, Anko. With someone in front of me who can clash head-on with the Hachibai, how could I possibly not confront him directly? Wouldn't that be terribly rude?" Instead of answering, Anko only rolled her eyes at Yuna's weird sense of what was considered rude and what wasn't. By now, she has gotten rather used to the occasional weirdness in Yuna's behavior, after all. A few minutes of comfortable silence later, Yuna resumed speaking. "By the way, how did your little scuffle with Orochimaru go?" "Meh, pretty annoying. As expected, he was ridiculously slippery, and without my breakthrough, he would have probably gotten away again. Well, in the end, I still burned him to a crisp, which felt rather lovely." Yuna glanced at Anko from the corner of her eyes before nodding her head in acknowledgement. I see, I noticed that something about you felt a little different, so that must be it, I guess. I wasn't expecting that killing or a chimera would still have such a positive effect on you. For a split second, or no, for less than a split second, Anko's face became slightly awkward. An average person would have never noticed that, but Yuna was a completely different case. She instantly noticed that something happened that Anko would rather hide from her, so how could she not get curious about it? Yuna glanced at Anko and met her eyes, resulting in Anko's eyebrows twitching in irritation. The moment her eyes met with Yuna's, she knew that it was her loss, and the smirk that appeared on Yuna's face moments later confirmed that notion. Come on, Anko, spit it out, what happened? Nothing. Yuna couldn't help but chuckle at Anko's blunt denial and started pondering what kind of event Anko might want to hide from her. Honestly, there wasn't much that Yuna thought Anko wouldn't want her to know, and after thinking about it some more, Yuna felt that she might have come up with a good theory. Considering she was fighting a chimera, someone who she considered her worst enemy for quite a long time, and that she made a breakthrough a short while ago, the chances are pretty high that she finished the whole fight with a flashy move. Additionally, she already said that she burned him to a crisp, which supports my previous guess. In conclusion, she might have gotten carried away and said a few things she usually would not have said. Or, to be more precise, she finally realized the true power of giving a technique a proper or inspiring name. A smirk appeared on Yuna's face that immediately sent shivers down Anko's spine. Hee, it seems you have finally awakened to the truth of the world, Anko. Only by giving your techniques proper names can you reach the apex. How could you possibly defeat your enemies with attacks that don't even have the intentions of piercing the heavens in their name? That's just ridiculous. A pained groan escaped Anko's mouth when she heard Yuna's declaration, but she decided to comment no further on it. However, she started making plans to bribe Yuna to not tell anyone about her using the Yuna-style naming sense for her attack. Yet again, silence covered the room the duo was currently in before it was broken by one of Yuna's clones that entered the cave with an excited smile on its face. Anko couldn't help but be interested in the clone's sudden appearance as well, since she had no clue why Yuna bothered sending out a clone to search Orochimaru's base. However, the clone didn't say a single word and only approached the real Yuna's with a smirk on its face, handed her a scroll, and then disappeared, while the real Yuna quickly stowed the scroll away in one of her seals, causing Anko to frown. What was in that scroll, Yuna? I don't think Orochimaru would have anything that could actually get you interested. Don't worry about it, Anko. It's just that I saw Orochimaru use a technique I got rather curious about, so I decided to grab it while I was here. As for which one it is, that is a surprise for later, hee. Anko couldn't help but raise her eyebrows when she heard Yuna's answer. She thought back to all the techniques Yuna saw Orochimaru use so far, but no matter how hard she thought about it, nothing appeared in her mind that could interest Yuna. After pondering about it some more, Anko simply shrugged her shoulders in disinterest. Since Yuna said that it would be a surprise, she decided just to wait and say, "Anyway, how about we get out of here? Even though Orochimaru is dead, the atmosphere in his hideout still gives me the creeps." Yuna nodded her head in acknowledgement at Anko's question and was just about to teleport them back to Konoha when she remembered something else. By the way, do you want to get the credit for killing Orochimaru, Anko? Anko was slightly taken aback by Yuna's sudden question, but she simply shook her head a short moment later. Nah, that would be a hassle. I bet Tsunade would keep nagging us for days if she heard about us sneaking out and killing Orochimaru, so let's hide it instead. It seriously isn't worth the trouble. Yuna nodded in agreement and gathered some chakra to make a total of 10 ice clones appear in the vicinity. 9 of them transformed into random thugs and ran off, and the remaining 1 stayed behind to modify the battlefield a little. Meanwhile, Yuna grabbed Anko's shoulder and teleported away. A few minutes later, shouts of joy echoed through Orochimaru's hideout as hundreds of people that were trapped inside cages were freed. After they felt gigantic amounts of battle intent and chakra flooding over them, they thought their last day had come, but now all of them celebrated their freedom and the person responsible for killing Orochimaru, the one who tormented them for such a long time. Someone finally killed Orochimaru, we are finally free. Praise our savior, Sasuke Uchiha-sama. Meanwhile, Sasuke was still knocked out on his bed and was twisting and turning in an attempt to get away from the bizarre form of Orochimaru that was chasing after him in all its glory. By now, its eyebrows became even bushier, its bowl cut even shinier, its green suit even tighter, and to put a cherry on top of the whole picture, a ridiculously long tongue was extending out of its mouth and was wiggling around in a rather disgusting manner. In conclusion, despite being praised as a hero by quite a few people right now, Sasuke wasn't having a good time at all. Chapter 279, Jiraiya's Offer. Yo, it's been a YWHOA. Splat. While Yuna and Enko were telling Hinata and Naruto about their encounter with Orochimaru, a big man with long spiky hair jumped through the living room window and greeted them. Unfortunately for the man, the moment his feet landed on the ground, seals lit up all over the room, and moments later, he fell to the ground, had his chakra sealed, was tied up, and had a cake in his face. When the four people saw who the intruder was, they all rolled their eyes simultaneously, and Yuna started to speak. Seriously, Jiraiya, shouldn't you have learned not to enter our house through the window the last time this happened? How is this my fault? I was given one of those black tokens at the gate and was told that that type of token grants me the most freedom of movement. Yet again, Yuna couldn't help but roll her eyes at Jiraiya. That might be the case, but do you seriously think that that would include our personal living space? I might not be someone who is interested in what is considered common sense, but even I wouldn't give someone random the keys to my house. Hey! Who are you calling someone random? I'm the great Jiraiya, the Toad Sage. Yeah, and you are currently wiggling around on the floor of my living room with cake in your face, so I don't really see your point. An annoyed expression appeared on Jiraiya's face, and after struggling to get out of the ropes that were binding him a little longer, he decided to give up his struggle. Fine, I give up. Sorry for entering unannounced through your window, so can you free me now? Yuna shrugged her shoulders and theatrically snapped her finger, resulting in Jiraiya's binding loosening. While Jiraiya was getting rid of his binding and wiping the cake out of his face, Enko noticed something unusual about Jiraiya. Wait a moment, since this was the first time the seal caught you, that means that this was the first place you entered illegally inside the Uzumaki compound. How come you didn't head for the Uzumaki compound's outdoor bathing area first? Or, to be more precise, the female-only section of said bathing area. Everyone's eyes immediately landed on Jiraiya when they heard Enko's question. Only now did everyone realize that that was indeed rather unusual behavior for Jiraiya. When he saw everyone looking at him weirdly, he scoffed in disdain while looking visibly offended. You really are looking down on me, aren't you? The reason I didn't go there first is that I didn't know that it even existed. Anyway, I have something important to do, so see you later. Splat. Not even half a second later, Jiraiya returned to his initial position on the ground with a new cake in his face. Damn it, this is unreasonable. I haven't even started peak. Cough researching yet. A few minutes later, Jiraiya was allowed to take a seat while there was still an annoyed expression on his face. Anyway, today I actually came here with an offer for you and Naruto, Yuna. While Yuna wasn't too interested in whatever Jiraiya had to offer, Naruto's eyes started to shine with curiosity. Oh? What do you have for us, young pervert? Jiraiya's eyebrows twitched in irritation when he heard the nickname Naruto had given to him but decided to comment no further on it. He already gave up that battle a while ago. As you already know, Akatsuki is after the Jinchuriki, but I got some information that they won't make any moves for a year or two. So I decided to take you on a trip to see other aspects of the world and not just the shinobi side. So far, you have only experienced life in Konoha, and every time you were outside of it, it was due to a mission. Seeing different aspects of the world while not on a mission will be helpful for your future. When he was done speaking, Yuna instantly lost the little interest she had in Jiraiya's offer and immediately waved it away. "I'm not going." Jiraiya nodded in acknowledgement when he heard Yuna's reaction. He honestly didn't think that Yuna would be interested anyway and only made the offer so she wouldn't feel left out. From the beginning, Yuna never gave off the feeling of someone ignorant of the world, which was why Jiraiya was confident that she would reject his offer. Naruto, on the other hand, was genuinely interested in Jiraiya's offer. Although he had already traveled around quite a bit, it was true that that was always due to some kind of mission, which usually had to be done at a certain pace, which prevented him from enjoying the travel properly. Despite being somewhat interested, a frown appeared on his face after a few moments of pondering, which caused Yuna to roll her eyes. "Naruto accepts your offer, but only if Haku and Ino are allowed to come with you too as well." Ine-san, where did that come from? Yuna gave the flustered Naruto an annoyed glance, while Hinata and Enko couldn't help but chuckle a little at Naruto's blushing face. Well, as a healthy young man, it's only natural that Naruto doesn't want to be separated from his two girlfriends, isn't that right, Anko? Indeed, I guess he can't even fall asleep without two beauties clinging to him anymore. Or maybe he has reached a point where he could only fall asleep after a long session of night acti. Bang. We three haven't done anything like that yet. Before Enka could finish speaking, Naruto interrupted her by smacking his palms on the table in front of him. Unfortunately, he let something else slip during the following outburst, which caused Yuna to chuckle in amusement. It's good that you have clear ambitions for the future, but make sure to wear protection when you do it. Do you want me to make a seal for that, or will you make it yourself? What kind of nonsense am I even saying? You probably already did, so you are always ready, right? Naruto's face flashed crimson when he heard Yuna's words, which certainly wasn't helped by the fact that he indeed had already made a seal like that, which was a secret he wouldn't spill to Yuna even under the worst torture. Since he was already backed into a corner, there was only one option left to save him from further embarrassment. "I'm coming with you if Ino and Haku can come as well, Flying Thunder God Seal." Naruto hastily spoke a few words to Jiraiya and instantly teleported away. There was nothing more useful for getting out of an embarrassing situation than instantly teleporting somewhere else. Meanwhile, Jiraiya didn't hear Naruto's words at all. In fact, he had exited the conversation a while ago and was currently furiously scribbling away in a notebook while a perverted chuckle would occasionally escape his mouth. Yuna reconsidered allowing Naruto to travel with Jiraiya for a moment but decided not to bother about it in the end. It should be fine. Naruto is fully capable of functioning independently and is not stupid enough to stop his training while he travels like Hisoka's version did. And if he does, After Naruto teleported, he thought he managed to get away from the whole situation, but moments later, a shiver went through his spine that caused him to look around warily. What is going on? For some reason, I feel like I am in danger. What has Nasan done this time? Chapter 280, A New Resident. Hinata, Anko, Naruto, Ino, and Haku were currently gathered inside a vast training hall due to Yuna calling them here. While Hinata, Anko, and Naruto could somewhat guess what Yuna wanted from them, Ino and Haku had no idea what this was about, since they hadn't been told about the incident with Orochimaru yet. A short moment later, Yuna entered the room with a casual smile on her face and started greeting the other 5 people. "Yo, thanks for coming. I wanted to introduce you to 2 people who will be residing inside the Uzumaki compound for a few months." While Hinata, Anko, and Naruto got their suspicions about today's gathering confirmed, Ino and Haku still had no idea why Yuna would bother gathering everyone just to introduce 2 new residents. Well, might as well start the introductions. I choose you. Mito Senju. A small token appeared in Yuna's hand, and moments later, she made an extravagant throwing motion while yelling out Mito's name and tossed it a few meters away from her. Meanwhile, everyone else in the room gave Yuna a weirded out look due to her yell, which Yuna ignored utterly. You do realize that none of them could possibly get that reference and that doing it just made you look like a widow, right? Nothing great was ever accomplished without making sacrifices. Are you all right, Yuna? That was a rather ordinary saying, and you didn't even mention the Tao once. I'm getting a little worried. Meh, I'm fine. I guess I'm still a little exhausted from fighting Mido and the third wreckage yesterday, and let's not forget about the night activities that followed after that. Right. While Yuna and Kurama were talking with each other, a complex arrangement of seals started unraveling with the token Yuna just threw as the source, and moments later, Mido Sanju appeared in the middle of the room. At first, she looked around the room in confusion, but when she noticed Yuna, she charged towards her without hesitation and punched her in the face. Who the hell hides sealing formulas inside a cake, you know? The Yuna Mido just punched shattered and turned into ice dust, and a second Yuna appeared nearby with a confused look on her face. Why are you asking a question you already know the answer to? I hide sealing formulas inside cakes. Mido's eyebrows twitched in irritation when she heard Yuna's words, and she was just about to go for another attack when Naruto stepped between the two people. Hee, how about we all calm down a little? There is no point in getting angry at people from the same clan, don't you think so as well, Grandma Mido? She was just about to push the intruder in a conflict aside when she heard Naruto call her Grandma Mido, which immediately attracted her attention. After looking at Naruto's face for a short moment, she immediately noticed his similarities to Kushina and remembered what Yuna told her about her family. A doting smile appeared on Mido's face as she immediately started petting Naruto's head. Ha, very good. Just look at you, you are much cuter than that crazy child over there. Oi, that's rude. Just look at your pure blue eyes, they make you look so innocent, unlike that battle junkie over there. Is it just me, or are you saying all of that just to insult me? Are you perhaps hungry? It seems like you like the cake I served you, so would you like another one? I wonder how you managed to get blonde hair. How weird. While that monster over there has the proper Uzumaki hair color, the much cuter sibling gets the unusual hair. Yeah, now it is official. You are definitely craving for another cake. While Mido was praising him, insulting Yuna, and Yuna was retorting to those insults, Naruto had sweat flowing down his back like a waterfall. He just wanted to alleviate the situation a little, and now he somehow stumbled into the crossfire of the duo's verbal battle. His eyes were wandering all over the room to seek support from the other people that gathered here, but neither of those four people seemed to have even noticed the current conflict and were animatedly talking with each other like they never had a more exciting conversation in their lives. In conclusion, they straight up abandoned Naruto to his fate. Wasn't he the one to walk straight into the crossfire himself? Since it was his decision, he should be the one to live with it. The back and forth between Yuna and Mido continued a little longer before it started calming down a bit, which caused Naruto to sigh in relief. Since Yuna's bards continued being rather playful, and Mido never really said something that Yuna considered to be actually insulting, the situation calmed down relatively peacefully. Yet again, Mido's gaze wandered through the room, and this time she inspected the other four women who she hadn't interacted with yet. Although she had seen Anko before, they didn't exchange a single word either, so this could probably be considered their first proper meeting. The first thing she noticed was that all four of them gave off a rather unique feeling. Despite everyone being somewhat young, all of them gave off a sense of strength and confidence, which Mido found rather unusual for such young people. However, as an experienced shinobi, she could easily tell that this wasn't baseless confidence. All four of them had the strength to back up their confidence and could be considered elite shinobi even during her time. That felt highly unusual to Mido. She could easily assume that the four women in front of her were the girlfriends Yuna mentioned, but how is it possible that all four of them were powerful shinobi as well? From the way Yuna told her story, Mido didn't believe that this was arranged in any way, so that only leaves one conclusion. Their strength significantly increased after they got together with the twins, but that should be impossible. Mido glanced at Yuna for a split second, and when she saw the knowing smirk on her face, a shiver went through Mido's spine. That damn monster, just how many tricks does she have up her sleeve?